Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks once again for joining us for today's show. There are no warnings, watches, or advisories out, so we'll go right to the satellite imagery. Back to yesterday, Sunday, a lot of cloudiness streaming northward here, bringing moisture right up to the North Gulf Coast, and a warm front had swung through southeast Bristol Bay, or eastern Bristol Bay, pulling warmer air into there. Colder conditions up to the north, and we had one system spreading back in, more rain over the southern southeast coast, kind of reminiscent of what's going on there today. And another wave down here rolling up, keeping the occasional rain in over the Alaska Peninsula areas. And a lot of chilly conditions, but no storminess to speak of out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Moving on to today, you can see a system now is spun a front almost up to the Aleutians there, but as you watch the progression, the cold air coming down over the western Bering Sea actually pushing that thing back to the south and keeping it from making any more headway to the north. And then some cloudiness out here over the northern Bering Sea, and this moisture now up and over the area here, but very limited precipitation with this cloud mass in over the southern interior. Mostly rainfall or precipitation right along the coast itself. Still raining at Cordova, over at Yakutat, and then this system rolling into the southeast coast. That brought gale force winds here all along the coast back over to Middleton Island today, with gusts as high as 40 knots or more reported by a couple of the buoys out there. You can see that pushing through and beginning to let up here now along the coast with the gusty winds continuing. Rainfall still occurring down over the southern southeast coast, but amounts in the last 24 hours not all that heavy, about 0.2 of an inch at Yakutat. Sitka picking up around 1/4 of an inch, so not as heavy on the rainfall, a little bit more of a wind producer, but definitely lighter amounts back here to the west. Kodiak Island, they picked about 0.12 of an inch in the last 24 hours, and hardly any of that fell this afternoon. Just kind of a variably cloudy to mostly cloudy condition out in that area. And then low pressure, hard to pick out here in this imagery, but that kicked some winds up there out of the west, gusting to 40 miles an hour at False Pass this afternoon. And we have one system about like this map for 9 a.m. this morning. Very weak front here along the southwest coast, so that moisture spreading in, linking up with the, or actually overrunning the colder air that's over the southwest interior. So an area, kind of a widespread area of occasional light snow or flurries going on here from Bristol Bay and extending up towards St. Lawrence Island. And this area here to the south is where the clouds and flurries or possibly the areas of light snow are. To the north, mostly colder, below zero conditions up here, to the mid-20s below zero this afternoon up on the north slope. Flurries going on to Kaktovik, otherwise pretty light winds up there under the influence of high pressure all along the coastline, the north slope there. And then this system with the gusty winds approaching the Panhandle, and that tonight actually again moving through now and should be out of the area later tonight. So the rain changing to showers, scattering out after midnight or completely ending with maybe some breaks showing up along the coast. Trough down here may spread a little bit of moisture in across Dixon Entrance, but definitely lighter amounts of rain down in that area. Still occasionally damp, chance of rain or rain and snow mix, Kodiak Island, more so here along the Alaska Peninsula and periods of light snow in areas here all along the southwest coast. It's low, about stationary near the Pribilof Island, so you're going to stay foggy with occasional snow in that area, but the winds will be coming down, and you can see winds will definitely drop off even at Cape Newenham, where they're gusting 35 to 40 this afternoon. Those will diminish tonight as this front really weakens. This front trying to push its way inland, but it's not going to take the moisture too far to the north. Maybe some light snow will show up along the Alaska Range, maybe to the south, but should stay dry and cold. Light winds over the interior, maybe some patchy low clouds or flurries here, say for the Koyukuk Valley, and maybe a little bit onto the east, but generally dry in the north slope with light wind conditions there. And up over the Russian Far East, you can see another system tracking eastward there. Nothing with this warm front, really just signifying a switch in the wind direction, south to north, ahead of the low pressure center. A little more active cold front coming in behind it. And this system, again, kind of a wave rotating back up to the northwest, trying to push some moisture into the central Aleutians, but really isn't going to do it. About the biggest effect this system will have as it slides eastward is kicking the winds up starting tomorrow and probably going into gale force winds on Wednesday. Otherwise, for tomorrow, this weakening low keeping the moisture, flurries and fog mainly right around the Pribilof Islands there, pulling back from the coast. Pretty nice day for the Alaska Peninsula. No big wind and possibly a dry day, and that dry conditions could extend all the way out to Shemya and Komodorskis. No change up here over the interior. Light winds, mostly clear skies, fair conditions, and watching this next front could possibly bring some light snow into Cape Lisburne, Point Hope areas there as this colder air pushes across some of the less ice-covered waters there, easily picking up moisture and probably start showing up as some light snow there on the extreme western Arctic coast during the day tomorrow. Still have low pressure here just south of Seward or just south of Kane's Head there, and so there's a chance of snow continuing. Also an upper level trough coming in from the west, so look for some light snow up along the Alaska Range and occasional light snow possible over all of south central Alaska tomorrow, but still a mixed variety here along the North Gulf Coast. Whatever falls around Kodiak Island will be mostly in the form of rain, again at sea level, and another batch of moisture pushing northward across the southeast coast tomorrow, so back into the rain definitely over the southern areas throughout the day, and even a chance of rain pushing northward tomorrow ahead of that frontal system. Taking a look at Wednesday, have this front now off the coast, doesn't really move inland, and in fact the rain may not stop at all here over the southern areas. Front kind of stalls and then approaches back from the northwest, so you're in a southeast flow. That's a wet and occasionally windy pattern. That's going to continue right through Thursday. That Arctic front makes a move to the southeast, makes a pretty good jog down into south central Alaska and over to the eastern interior by Wednesday afternoon, with a leading edge right about through here by about this time Wednesday. And then this trough back to the northwest, signifying the upper level trough that's coming southward, and eventually it'll push a good amount of cold air right into the Gulf of Alaska, and that all deflecting this system off to the east. In fact, the area right there probably will develop into a separate system and take off to the northeast, so that'll link up with this colder air, and look for a pretty good storm possibly moving into the Panhandle later in the week. Kind of hard to tell exactly where it'd make landfall at this point, but this will get pushed out of the way before that happens. Higher pressure back to the west, and again the gradient between that storm to the south, bringing gale force winds, possibly gusts of 50 miles an hour over the eastern Aleutians. A little more northeasterly, a little chillier, so look for some rain and snow showers, Adak, Atka, on out to Shemya. And for temperatures, lower 20s at 23 at Wasilla this afternoon. These are all 4 o'clock readings. The warm spot was in Metlakatla today. At 4 o'clock, 54, but actually had topped out at 55 earlier. Light snow and 30 degrees up at Skagway, 35 and rain at the state capital, 38 over at Yakutat. And Valdez, 34 degrees, 36 at Seward. North winds there kicking up to about 20 miles an hour, so that keeping the rain out of that area. 39 in Kodiak and a 28 at Kenai. In the Cop River Basin, Gulkana, 12 degrees, 0 at Northway, and a little above 0 up across the Tanana Valley. Fairbanks at 3, but down to 20 below zero at Tanana, minus 18, Huslia, and 20 below at Buckland. Up to the north, minus 9, Zanatuvik and Arctic Village. Umiat, the cold spot again. Umiat Airfield, minus 23. Generally below zero along the Arctic coast, except where there was a little cloud cover over Kaktovik. Temperature up to 4, minus 2 Shishmaref. 20 degrees warmer across the peninsula there at Nome, and a 25 at Gamble. Again, gusty north winds. Tin City, 1 degree north, 35. 25 there at Monik. Inland, a couple of 21s at St. Mary's and Bethel. Again, the mild conditions that pushed into Bristol Bay yesterday persisting today. 40 degrees at Pilot Point, but 29 at Koliganek. Just a shade above freezing this afternoon there at St. Paul and St. George. Lower to mid-30s out over the Aleutians, to near 40 here for the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak. Lows tonight down anywhere from 10 to 30 below zero, with the coldest temperatures occurring again along the North Slope and possibly down over the Yukon Flats. But the 0 degree isotherm here almost right along the Alaska Range and extending back out towards St. Michael. Teens and 20s to the south of that, to 30s here along the Alaska Peninsula, 30s and lower 40s over the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow, about the same pattern. Coldest north of the mountains. Some areas up here over the North Slope and northeast, keeping around 20 below throughout the day. Much milder, pushing up maybe upper 20s to about 30 for Bristol Bay, up to near 40 over the eastern Aleutians, and into the 40s, or upper 30s and 40s. For the Panhandle, flying weather tomorrow, that persistent area IFR here along the North Gulf Coast, pushing in toward the northwestern Panhandle a little bit there. But looking for a break to show up here over the southern areas before that next system rolls on up into the area. That may or may not occur, may not go VFR. If it does, it'll probably be just for a short time there. But a lot of VFR up over the northern interior, all the way to the Arctic coast. And then watching this next batch of moisture, probably will push into the area late tomorrow afternoon and evening, bringing the conditions down there. But just marginal VFR here, and that over the southeast Bering Sea and up along the coast. Pretty good out to the west. Passes, Zanatuvik, VFR on either approach tomorrow. Another VFR day for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill starting out VFR, possibly becoming marginal into the afternoon. Rainy, same forecast, VFR possibly becoming marginal. And for windy, a good VFR day there tomorrow, but here on the south entrance, especially to the southwest, you might start seeing some marginal VFR show up. Otherwise, Isabel occasionally marginal. And for Mentasta, possibly marginal on the south side, otherwise VFR. Tanita, occasionally marginal. Portage, also IFR at times, at any point in the day tomorrow. And Chilkoot White, marginal VFR. Freezing levels late tonight, early tomorrow morning here over the northern Bering, then paralleling the coastline right into Bristol Bay, and actually right along the coast, and then cutting inland there across Lincoln Island Glacier Bay, and then 2,000 to 4,000 feet below that. And out here to the west, 2,000 feet, just about off the chart now. Icing threats, not much, maybe some scattered stuff here south of Kodiak Island, back into the peninsula and a little bit over the Bering Sea, but not a bad day icing-wise. Tomorrow's a chance of some icing here over the southern Panhandle, possibly here over the Copper River Basin, but that's just a chance, and it would be light at that. Upper level wind flow chart showing the jet stream here of the system south of the Aleutians coming really close to the eastern Aleutians there, then takes a turn off to the southeast. So we're watching this upper level trough gradually swinging through here, increasing the chances of snow from the Alaska Range eastward, and high pressure up off the Arctic coast. Then watching this trough back through here, actually a couple of them coming in, and they'll be dropping down into the interior later on in the week, bringing a pretty good shot of cold air that'll push right across Kodiak and into the Gulf of Alaska by the end of the week. 9,000 foot winds, kind of a light variable pattern here over interior Alaska with a weak low right there, and then that weakening one there near St. Paul. Another one there east of Kodiak Island, so that all means light variable winds till you get to the Arctic coast, so they could be 25 knots. And 35 knot winds mostly over Dixon Entrance. And this stronger wind field here will stay south of the Aleutians, at least for the moment, or for tomorrow. But you can see 50 knots here getting pretty close. Otherwise 15 to 25 knots. And this area will probably slip up a little bit tomorrow night and on Wednesday. Otherwise light winds mostly from the east here over south central Alaska. Easterlies 15 to 20 the farther north. You're going to need up to 30 knots there for the eastern Arctic coast. Pretty light here in the west, light and variable, as well as the southeast coast. Turbulence, not a whole lot expected here over the mainland areas, and even down along the Panhandle, looks pretty smooth. Gulf of Alaska, right out to Kuskokwim Bay. Maybe some light to isolated moderate chop there along the eastern stretch of the Arctic coast. Then with those northerly winds, any moderate stuff will stay out here over the Bering Sea, and then some of this may advance northward late tomorrow and tomorrow night, but more likely on Wednesday. And after the break, Hangar Flying, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ed Cornfield. On behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to another edition of Hangar Flying. My guest this evening is Wally Hansen. Wally is presently the chief instructor at the Elmendorf Flying Club. Welcome to Hangar Flying, Wally.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So let's start out by talking a little bit about your history, aviation history, how you got started in aviation.
Okay. In 1971, I was in Air Force ROTC at Southern Illinois University, and the Air Force paid for my flight training that summer, and I got my license in July of 1971.
And when did you become a flight instructor?
I became a flight instructor first in the Air Force in 1978, and then for my CFI was 1994.
Okay. So tell me just a couple of the different airplanes you flew in the military.
In the military, I flew primarily the A-37 and the OB-10, just a smattering of time in a C-12 and F-4 and F-16 as an evaluator.
Which one was your favorite?
The favorite, the sexiest was the F-16, obviously, and favorite was the A-37 because it was very accurate for ordnance delivery.
So now we're going to jump forward many years, and now you're a chief flight instructor at the Elmendorf Aero Club.
I am, that's correct.
And I guess you've actually been there on and off for quite a while?
Yes, we moved, I actually started off my CFI career in Mons, Belgium at the Shape Flying Association, Chèvre Air Base in Belgium, and moved here in 1997 and have been at the Aero Club ever since.
Okay, well, good. So as a flight instructor, there's something that I wanted to talk about. There was an incident that happened in Merrill Field here probably about a month or two ago where an airplane engine quit to try to turn around and didn't make the turn. So let's talk about, I'm at the end of the runway, I'm getting ready for takeoff. What are some of the things as a pilot that I want to think about even before I take off in an airplane?
That's an excellent question. We have a checklist that covers the pre-takeoff briefing. That includes calling the airspeed alive after you've released brakes on the runway, what altitude you are going to, if you lose an engine after takeoff, what altitude below which you would go straight ahead or avoid obstacles.
And how, if the engine quits, you're saying?
Yes.
So how do I know what altitude that is?
Well, I've heard a lot of things over the years. Some people say 500 feet, some people say 1,000 feet, and the question I always ask is, where did that altitude come from? The primary answer I get is, that's what my instructor taught me. So individuals don't really know what their particular altitude is, and we've developed a system during the annual check rides for our members and also for BFRs and new students of how to actually determine that altitude. And what we do is we go out, and at altitude for us is generally somewhere around 2,500 feet is our maneuvering altitude. And from there you establish a full power climb at VX. For our airplanes, that's about 65. And once you're stabilized in that climb, then you pick an altitude, and at that altitude you pull the power to idle, simulate an engine failure, and then hack the clock and turn as quickly as you are comfortable with. And it varies per individual, but the whole gist is you have to be able to turn the airplane around in the minimum amount of time with the least amount of altitude loss within your comfort level. Generally that winds up to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 seconds. with an altitude loss of 3 to 4 to 500 feet. So we take 2 or 3 times, and we do that to determine an average altitude loss. We'll say 300 feet. To that, we add what the Air Force used to call the 6-second rule. The 6-second rule says that the first 2 seconds you actually determine and admit that you have an engine failure. The next 2 seconds is used to determine the appropriate control inputs and make those inputs, and the last 2 seconds is for the aircraft to fully react to the control inputs. That time limit doesn't mean a whole lot unless you start equating altitudes to that. So for the 6-second rule, we apply about 200 feet to that, and you would add that to your 300, which now makes 500. And then you're going to, on the turn, you're going to be offset from center line, either left or right, depending on what direction you go. And so you're going to have to wind up making about 300 to 360 degrees total turns to get back on center line from your offset. And we add another 200 feet for that action.
So what's your total that you need?
So in a case of 300 feet plus 200 would make it 700 feet. And the individual now knows that that is, no kidding, his altitude. If he's below that, there's no question. Straight ahead.
Wally, I'm going to have to stop you there. That's a great thing for as a pilot to know before he takes off. We're out of time. I'd like you to come back next session.
Sure.
So anyway, folks, thanks for watching and fly safe.
Welcome back. We're looking at the ice chart here. Still an area of open water up over the Chukchi Sea there to the west of the coast. Even some of this area, having just recently iced up, isn't all that thick or solid. So those northwest winds expected to come in across that area. This open water will provide a moisture source, which will probably result in snow once that kicks in. It's just timing each individual impulse as it comes down from the northwest. Otherwise, not too bad here. Winds coming back up to small craft advisory levels ahead of the next system pushing northward here. Generally maintaining a general east to northeast wind direction everywhere else in the 10 to 20 knot range. And then for Wednesday, looks like some good gales at low center coming up off the coast there. So gale force winds, especially from about Sitka out and then on down to the south. Even small craft advisories, and then turning northeast at only 20 for the far north coast. Northeast 25 here over the northern areas due to the pressure falls as that system comes up, and then swinging around to the southeast, 25 knots with higher gusts over the southern inside waters. Kodiak Island off the coast, northeast 25 there. That same pattern extends right on up into Prince William Sound, but should be more of a 15 knot sustained wind there. Pretty light winds for Cook Inlet, right on down into the Barren Islands tomorrow. Then things will become northwesterly, and again, once that Arctic front swings through, should see a pretty big increase in the winds here across Kamishak Bay and eventually down across the Barren Islands. But for Wednesday afternoon, bring them up to 25 to 30 knots at this point, with freezing spray becoming heavy freezing spray Wednesday night. Lighter winds here off to the west, and 20 to 25 knots for Cook Inlet in the afternoon. Bristol Bay, pretty light on the winds tomorrow, otherwise northwest, 15 to 20 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. And for Wednesday, a little bit of an increase, not much yet, just 15 knots for Bristol Bay, but northeasterlies coming up to 25 knots. That means small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula. Out in the Aleutians, we got some small craft advisories tomorrow due to that storm to the south here, showing up along the Adak-Atka area. Otherwise, lighter winds, 10 to 20 knots elsewhere. And for Wednesday, got gale force winds now here. Central Aleutians sliding into the eastern areas, lighter to the west. Light variable winds tomorrow for Kuskokwim Bay here. And even this whole marine zone pretty light, only 15 knots for St. Lawrence Island. Northerlies at about 20 for the northern Bering Sea, becoming northwest at 20 for the Pribilofs. And for Wednesday, small craft advisories here along a portion of the southwest coast, and probably something less than that onto the south. Pribilof Island, St. Paul, St. George, look for 25-knot winds from the northeast. Much lighter though, again, high pressure pushing into the western portion of this St. Matthew Marine area, so be kind of a contrast to the winds here from east to west. Up along the Arctic coast tomorrow, easterlies 20 knots at times, and southeast or variable to southeast for the remainder of the coastline. Kind of a general south to north breeze here as that front and low pressure area advances to the east here. It remains out to the west, and then that pushes through, and then these northwest winds 20 to 25 knots, strongest here from Tin City right up to Cape Lisburne, possibly up to Point Lay. Lighter, more variable winds with no gradient at all from the central coast there all the way to Demarcation Point. And taking a look at the forecast for tonight, all the moisture is going to be down here along the coast or over the southern areas. Some light snow conditions may push up to the Alaska Range, Nabesna, down across the Wrangell Mountain areas. Rain will stay rain, places like Cordova into Yakutat, and locally into the Panhandle. Still have a mixed condition between these two areas, but dry to the north, dry and cold, temperatures well below zero again, 10 to 30 below, coldest readings up here over the North Slope and the Yukon Flats. Still looking at a band of light snow or flurries here over the southwest part of the state. And here's the next system that will be tracking northward and spreading rain from south to north here over the Panhandle tomorrow. And weak low here right near Seward or just to the south, so occasional light snow possible here over all areas of south central Alaska, even back along the Alaska Range, maybe some flurries developing over the Tanana Valley, but clear and cold. Next front pushing in from the northwest like that. Good night.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.